Hi guys, welcome back to the channel today. My name is Osereme, and if you're here for the first time, see my channel for the first time, see my face for the first time, thank you so much for stopping by. Hit on the subscribe button and also please turn on notification bell so you're notified when I post a new video. So in today's video, I want to share with you guys how to draft a Victorian corset. Now this tutorial has been highly requested by a lot of you guys, but I've decided to share this video into two. This particular video you're watching right now is going to be the pattern drafting, and in my next tutorial I'll share with you guys how to cut and stitch the pieces together. So before we go into that, I would like to share with you guys how to take the body measurement. Now a lot of you guys have been complaining in the comment section when I say take your nipple to nipple measurement, take your bust measurement. A lot of people don't really understand what I'm trying to explain. This is going to be very fast. I just want to quickly show you guys the points in the body form that I'm talking about when I mention those areas. So we're going to start from the shoulder. So the shoulder measurement is the measurement from the end of your client somewhere around here, the shoulder measurement from here down to this point. So what you're going to do is to place your tape on one point and take it to the other point of your client's measurement, and whatever you have there is your shoulder measurement. So now for the other body measurement, we are going to start from this shoulder line here. So you're going to place your tape on the shoulder line and you're going to measure down to the middle of the bust. So this measurement right here from the shoulder down to this middle of the bust is what I usually call the bust point. So this is your bust point. Still leaving the tape at this point here, you're going to take a measurement down to underneath the person's bust. So whatever you have there is your under bust measurement. Now, again, leaving the tape at that top, we are going to come down to the waistline. But before I take this waist measurement, I need to explain to you guys, for this particular tutorial that I'm about to share with you guys, we are going to be needing waist measurement from the shoulder down to the waist in front, and we are going to also be taking it from the shoulder down to the waist at the back. This is because actually if you take this measurement, you notice that it's different. Because I want to make use of a side dart, we need to take this measurement the front and at the back. So I'm going to be taking the shoulder down to the waist measurement in front, and you can see that what I have here is 16 inches. Before you take this measurement on your client, just go ahead and tie a rope around the client's waist so that that part of the waist that is curvy, so that you not make any mistake when you're taking it at the back. Now to take the same measurement at the back, you're going to ask the client to turn over and you're going to place your tape on the shoulder down to the waist at the back. So can you see what I have here? For this particular body form, I have 14.5 inches at the back, and at the front I have 16 inches. So the difference between that now is 1.5 inches if you subtract it. Now the standard is 2 inches, so if you don't know what yours is, you can just go ahead and use 2 inches. So now the shoulder down to the hemline or the end of the blouse, wherever you want the blouse to end, you're still going to place your tape at that shoulder. You're going to take the measurement down to that point. So for me here, let's just say we want this to be 22 inches. You're going to place it down there and take that measurement. Now once you're through taking all those measurements, the next thing you want to do is to take all the round body measurements. So first, you're going to take your round bust measurement. You're going to place the tape around the bust. Make sure that you have one of your fingers in between the person's body and the tape to just check that it's not too tight. So once you're through taking this measurement, this is your round bust measurement. Okay. Now for the under bust, you're going to do the same thing. Place the tape around the under bust to take the round under bust measurement. Now the waist as well, you're going to place the tape around the waist and take the round waist measurement. Round waist measurement is different from shoulder to waist measurement. Okay, now for the end of the blouse where you want it to end as well, I take a measurement around, and sometimes I call this the hip line. So whatever you have around here, this is going to be serving as your hip measurement. So these are the basic measurement, and lastly I'm going to show you guys the nipple to nipple measurement. As the name implies, nipple to nipple. So this is the measurement from this point to this point. It's also referred to as the bust pan. So from here to here, take that measurement on your client. So whatever you have is going to be your bust pan or nipple to nipple measurement. So those are the basic measurements that we'll be needing for this particular tutorial, but I would like you guys to pay close attention to the measurement from the shoulder to the waist in front and the shoulder to the waist at the back. So like we've already seen, The difference here on this particular dummy is 1.5 inch. For me, I had 2 inches on my body, and my body measurement is what I'm going to be using to draft this pattern. So let's go ahead and start drafting. So guys, I have my pattern paper and measuring materials here. We're just going to go straight into the pattern drafting. And as you can see, I've already drawn a line across here. This is my starting line. It is also referred to as the shoulder line, as I've labeled it SL. So from this shoulder line, I'm going to start placing the measurements that we just took. So from my shoulder to bust point, I have 10 inches. I'm going to make a mark here. Still leaving the tape at the shoulder, I'm going to come down to my under bust, which is 13 inches, and mark it. And then from the shoulder down to my waist in front, I have 16 inches. Remember that the shoulder to waist in front is different from what we have at the back, like I've said earlier. Don't forget. So my shoulder to waist in front for this particular tutorial is 16, and for the back I have 14 inches. Now from my shoulder, now I'm going to place it down to the hemline, which is where I want this particular blouse to stop. I just marked that point at 22 inches, and as you can see, I'm drawing straight line across to make the lines more visible. So this is the bust line, this is the under bust line, here we have the waistline, and then lastly we have the hemline. So guys, I'm going to be taking this part as the middle of our blouse. So from the shoulder line here, from the middle I am coming in by 3 inches, and from the line I have, I'll come down by 3 inches as well. I'm just trying to get a simple round neckline. So now from the middle of our blouse again here, I'm going to divide my shoulder measurement into two, and that is 7. I'm going to make a point here. So now from that point, I'll come down by 1 inches to get my shoulder slope. So from that 1 inch point, I'm going to connect a slant into the neckline. Okay, so go ahead and do the same thing, because our shoulder is not straight. We need to have a shoulder slant. Now for our armhole depth, what I normally do is I divide my bust measurement into 6, and whatever I get, I add 1.5 to that. So from the top of the shoulder slope, after I divided that measurement, I got 7 inches. So I'm just going to come down by 7 inches, and I also drew a straight line across and label this line my chest line. So now I'm just going to come down from this shoulder slope down to the chest line to get the armhole depth. Okay, so now in between this armhole depth, I'm going to divide it into two equal halves again. As you can see, I'm using my tape rule. I'll make a point there, and from that point I'm going to go in by half of an inch. Now coming down to this chest line, I'm going to divide my round bust measurement into 4 and make a point there. So now I'll connect this point, and this point with my curve to give me my armhole curve. So guys, to get our dart on this bust line, I'm going to divide my bust span measurement or nipple to nipple measurement into 2, and I'll make a point here. I also do it on the waistline and then on the hemline as well. And I'm going to use my ruler to connect a straight line across these points. So now on this waistline, we're going to take our darts in here. So from the middle of this line here, I'm going to go out on both sides by 0.75 inches. So I'll go out by 0.75 on both sides. You can use 0.5 if you want to, but for this particular one I want to use 0.75 because I want the waist to be snatched a little bit. So I'm just connecting this 0.75 point to the top, which is the bust point, and then from the hemline I'm going to come up by 1 inch and then connect this dart as well to meet that point. So now we're going to come to this shoulder here. I'm going to divide what I have on this shoulder here into two equal halves. I'm going to make a point here. Then from this point, I'll connect a straight line to meet the bust point. So guys, remember that this here is our bust measurement divided by 4. Now coming down to the waistline, I'm going to divide my round waist measurement into 4 and make a point there. Now I'm going to measure the dart I have here and replace it. So I have 1.5. I'm going to add it back here. Now on this hemline, we're going to use our hip measurement divided by 4. Remember our round hip measurement. So we're going to use that here. Go ahead and mark it. and then we're going to connect all the last points to give me my nice curve on the side. So now guys, we're going to come to this line here. This is the chest line, remember. It's best to go up on the chest line because we're going to have an arc for our sweetheart neckline. So what I want to do is I normally come up from this point by 1.5 inch. So you can also go ahead and use 2 inches, but I think the highest you should do is 2 inches. But for me, I'm coming up by 1.5 inch from this point, and I'm just drawing a straight line across. So from this middle of the line, I'm going out on both sides by 1/2 inch. So this 1/2 inch point, this is our over bust tightening. I'm just going to connect it now to meet the bust point. So go ahead and do the same thing. So now guys, the next thing we want to do is to take our side dart. So on this bust line here, I am going to come down by 2 inches, which was the difference between my shoulder to waist in front and shoulder to waist at the back. So I'm going to connect this point to meet the bust point. Okay, so let me just use my marker to trace this down, the bust line down, so that it's more visible. So this space here that I have here is the dart intake. This is the difference between my shoulder to waist in front and shoulder to waist at the back. Please don't forget that. So now we're going to come up to this neck area here. So from the top of this arc here, I'm going to just arrange it to meet the chest line and make a curve here. So from this other side, I'll just curve it into the armhole like this. I just use my free hand to finish it up here. So this is my neckline for the top of the blouse. So guys, the next thing we want to do is the underbust tightening. So please make sure you're paying serious attention to this particular part. So you're going to divide your round underbust measurement into 4 and make a point there. So I just did. And you're going to measure what you have left. So what I have left here is almost 1 inch. So I'll just take 1 inch. So that 1 inch here, I'm going to be sharing it in between this dart here from the dart leg. So I'll be giving 0.25 to this point going towards the center, and then this side I'll give the remaining 0.75. So I'm just going to mark 0.25 from the dart leg. Don't mind where my tape is showing. I'm just marking 0.25, and then from this other side I marked 0.75. So I'm just going to connect these two to meet the bust point with a curve. Now let's assume that what you had was 1.5 after you were done taking that measurement. So what you have now is that you divide out unequally. So you give 0.5 to the part going towards the center, and then you give the remaining 1 inch to the part going towards the side. I hope you guys understand this. So now from these curves I just made, I'm just going to connect straight lines to meet the ends of my dart. So when you draw this line across, you might notice that the line does not pass through the dart on one side. Don't worry so much about it. All you have to do is to stitch in your allowances later. So now guys, I'm marking out this dart here, this side dart, because it's going to be cut out. So by the time we cut this out, you notice that the length in front and the length at the back will now become the same, because I'm sure a lot of you guys must have been wondering when I said the shoulder to waist measurement is front is 2 inches longer than what we have at the back. So by the time we cut out that side dart, you notice that it's exactly the same. So now from this hemline, I'm coming up by 1 inch because I want to make a curve on the end of this blouse. I don't just want it to go straight down. So as you can see, I just use my curve to just create that curve. So guys, I want to create another line. I want to cut this center piece again into two. So from the first dart line, I got the middle of this center piece. It's not really the middle, but it's just the middle from the dart line. So that measurement, I'm marking it here. I'm also going to repeat the measurement here. You can just do it all the way along all the lines here, but these two lines I'll just use it to connect a straight line all the way to the end. So you can just draw the straight line without adding that to it. Okay, you can just draw this straight line without adding that to it, but I am adding 1/4 inch on both sides. That so I went in on the waistline by 1/4 inch on both sides. This is because I want to snatch my waist by 1 inch. So I'm removing half inch together altogether from the front pattern. So at the back pattern as well, I remove another half inch. Altogether, I've removed 1 inch from my actual waist measurement. So as you can see, I've just marked all the areas that are going to be cut out. So this one here now is the center front one. This is the center front. And then here I have the side front. So you have to label these very properly, just so you don't mix them up later. So guys, like I said before, you can just draw a straight line across there without actually going in with the dart. You can just draw a straight line across and cut it out straight. Mind you, the more lines you actually cut out, the more pieces you cut out, the harder it is for you to actually stitch it together. Now to cover up our side dart, as you can see, I'm making a straight cut in the middle, and after that I am going to cut out one part of the side dart. Go ahead and do the same thing I'm doing right now. Then now we can use the down part to cover up the dart. So I'm just going to use my tape to do this. So go ahead and cover up this dart like this, and then we'll continue to cut out every other piece. We'll be covering the part that is short on the side dart very soon, but just go ahead and finish cutting all the other pieces, and then we'll come back to finish up the side that is not full. So I'll label this 1, 2, and 3 so that we don't mix them up. So these are all the front pieces. Now for this side that is not enough, you'll notice it that it's going to be shorter when you cover up your dart. Just use a piece of paper like I'm doing here and tape it together, and then now cut out everything straight. Cut it out straight to follow the original line that you had before. So this is all for the drafting of the front pattern. Let's go ahead and cut out the back pieces. So guys, as you can see, I've already drawn a straight line across, which is our shoulder line. So from this shoulder line, I'm going to continue to take all my measurements. So the first measurement I'm going to be taking on this back piece is the measurement from my shoulder to the hemline. So remember that my shoulder to hemline for the front piece was 22 inches, and the difference between my front waist and back waist is 2 inches. So 22 inches minus that 2-inch difference is 20 inches. So I just make a point here at 20 inches. So that's what's going to be our back length from shoulder to the hemline. I hope you guys actually understand what I'm trying to explain here. Okay, so now placing my tape on this shoulder line, I am going to come down to my bust point, and my bust point is 10 inches. Now I'm going to take the waist measurement from the shoulder line. Remember that our shoulder to waist measurement for the back piece was 14 inches. Okay, so don't forget that we had a difference of 2 inches from the beginning. Please don't forget. And that when we took our shoulder to waist measurements from the back, mine was 2 inches shorter than what we had in front. So as you can see, I'm just drawing straight lines across with my ruler. So this is our bust line, this is the waistline, and then this is the hemline. So now for the back neckline, I'm going to come in by 3 inches just like I did on the front pattern. So we'll come in by 3 inches and we'll come down by 1 inch because this is the back, and I'm just going to connect it with my cuff. So now after this, I'm going to go in and divide my shoulder measurement into two just like I did in front. I'll come down by 1 inch for my shoulder slope, and I'm just going to draw this into the neckline. So I'll be coming down from the shoulder slope by 7 inches, which is my bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5, and I will draw a straight line across. This is our new chest line, and now from this shoulder slope I will draw a line to meet the chest line. So on the chest line here, I'm going to divide my bust measurement into 4, just like we did before on the front pattern. And I'm just going to connect the dots using my marker to get an armhole. So now I want you to pay attention to the darts. So on this waistline, I'm going to go in by 3.5 inches, which is half of my nipple to nipple measurement. I also do the same thing on this chest line. Let's remember that this is the chest line. So I'll do the same thing, divide my nipple to nipple measurement into 2 and make a mark there. And I'll do the same thing on the hemline. So I'll just connect these with a ruler. So now I'm going to take in my darts just like we did in front. I'm coming in by 3/4 of an inch, which is 0.75 on both sides. So on this, from this chest line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch for the back pattern, and then I'm just going to connect the dart to meet that 1 inch point I came down from. Just notice what I'm doing here. Okay, now from the end of the pattern as well, the hemline, I'll come up by another 1 inch, and I'm just going to connect my dart to meet that 1 inch point as well. So now I'm going to add my body measurements just like I did on the front piece. I will divide my waist measurement by 4, replace the dart, and then on the hemline I will divide my hip measurement by 4, and I will just join all of them together to give me my curve. And after this, I'm going to come up from the hemline by 1 inch to give me my curve at the end of the blouse, just like we did on the front pattern. Notice that on this back pattern, I didn't bother myself adding any zipper allowance here because it's not needed. We're going to be using a loop for the back of this corset. But from the waistline in the middle, I have come in by half an inch, and from the end of the blouse I'm connecting to that half an inch, and from that half an inch point I'm taking it all the way to somewhere close to the neckline. This is for me to eliminate any bulginess on the back pattern. Now coming down to this armhole area here, from this armhole we are going to connect the neckline for the back. Remember that we slant our cups into the armhole for the front piece. So now from the end of the armhole I just use my curve to create a nice neckline for the back. So this upper area is no longer needed, but if you want to use yoke, you can actually cut that area and keep. So now for the back, I want to add another dart. So I'm going to be adding this dart to the side. So from the middle of the first dart, I created a point, and I'm just going to draw a straight line across, just like I did on the front. Like I said before, it's not necessary for you to go in on both sides of this second line. You can leave it like this and just cut it out when you're cutting your pattern. But just like I did in front, I'm coming in by 1/4 of an inch, which is 0.25 on both sides. So I'm just going to connect the dart as well, just like I did on the front pattern. So now altogether I've taken away 1 inch extra from my actual waist measurement because I've taken half inch in from the back pattern and half inch in from the front pattern. So now coming to this line here, this other dart, from the dart line I'm coming out on both sides by 0.25, which is 1/4 of an inch, and I'm going to connect this new point to meet the dart on the waistline, and then from there I'll just trace it down to the end of the dart. So this 1/4 of an inch I came out by at the top on both sides is for me to tighten up the neckline at the back pattern. So this is basically all for the drafting of this area. This is the dart. As you can see, I'm just making marks to show that these areas are going to be cut out. So the back of this corset is going to be having a loop. So what I want to do now is from this middle here, I'm going to come in by 1.5 inch. I initially wanted to do 2 inches, but it was too close to the dart, so I decided to use 1.5 inch. But if you try 2 inches and it's not too close to your dart, go ahead and use it. So I will use 1.5 inch on all the lines here, and I'm going to connect it together with my ruler, and then I'm just going to draw circles here to show that there's going to be a loop here. Okay, so this is the center back one, this is the center back two, and then here I have the side back. So please make sure that you label your patterns properly so that you don't mess it up when you are trying to stitch them down, because by the time you have so many pieces to stitch together, it's usually very hard if you don't label the patterns properly. So as you can see, I'm just cutting out the dart areas that I don't need on all the patterns. Go ahead and do the same thing, and what I have left here are the back patterns, so I just label them 1 2 3. So this is all for the drafting of these patterns. I'm going to bring the front patterns together now. So now let me show you what I mean. So this is the side back and the side front. Can you see that from the armhole area they are exactly the same length? One is no longer than the other. Okay, so this is what I mean when I was trying to explain to you guys that after you are done drafting out the pattern, you realize that the side back and the side front actually meet each other perfectly. One is no longer than the other. So thank you so much for watching this tutorial today. In my next video, I'll be sharing with you guys how to stitch it down.